All right, so having a conversation with Sir Korsak from Avacal about a class he's got coming up, and I think we're gonna be talking about triggers. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Korsak.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm teaching a class here at an event, Mergenwood anniversary coming up in a couple of weeks, and I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on some triggers in fighting, some things that tell you what to throw, when to throw, where to step, when to step, that sort of stuff. And the way that I'm finding that I think about fighting is not common around here, so I thought I'd kind of reach out to somebody smarter than me. But I tend to I'm thinking about fighting in the I see this, that makes me know that this is open. I will do this thing. If I'm fighting a round shield person, if I see the top edge of their shield cover their eye. Oh, are we cutting in and out? Looks like
Hey, you cut out a little bit. You're back.
Yeah, so thinking about just what sorts of things do I throw and why do I throw them, right? If I'm fighting somebody the same sort of thing, if I watch somebody with a kite shield cover their eyes, I still can't throw that flat snap to the leg. I can throw a wrap to the leg, but then keeping a catalog of the things that I'm paying attention for and then executing that when that happens. Like if my mind's working like a flowchart, you can rewrite flowcharts and explain them and give them to other people and be like, here's the things that you should do. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to go over some ones that you use, if you use them, and if not, then we could maybe make some and to teach to other people, because that's kind of what I want to go over.
I totally use triggers. So the thing I understand about triggers in general is what you're talking about. I mean, first off, I think you pretty much nailed it as far as what your description of what triggers are. But it's basically it's an automated response to stimulus,
Yeah.
right? I don't look at it so much of flow charting as it is, you're right. There's a as soon as I see a thing that triggers this particular response.
Yeah.
I refer to that as a sight picture.
Okay.
The sight picture for me is this snapshot image of a situation, right? And as soon as I get that snapshot image, as soon as I recognize it, that's the stimulus, and my body is going to respond in a pretty much automated way
Yep.
after that. And I've got a couple that are fairly firmly ingrained, and then I got many other responses I think that are kind of a little more flowcharty, where I kind of recognize the situation, and that kind of provides me some things, and that I think is more kind of gets to when we talk about target recognition.
Mm-hmm.
There's you don't have to have eyes on target in order to recognize that a target exists.
Yeah. In fact, you kind of just start to learn over a while. Like, I'm not looking at their leg, like specifically the shot that I talk about all the time. I'm not looking at the person's leg when I watch their eyes get covered. I have to be kind of paying attention to what is being covered by their shield, by their whatever, in order for me to know, well, now their leg has to be open. They have a round shield. It's going to definitely be there. I'm not looking at that target. I'm looking at the thing that makes me know that target exists.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's target recognition. That's where where because we don't want to look down at somebody's leg
Yeah, right.
to get the target on there, because that gets into reading your opponents too easy. You
Right.
look right at the leg there. So yeah, I mean, that sort of target recognition is kind of and I guess it could kind of fall into triggers, but I guess that's kind of a fine line as to which is which.
Mm-hmm.
In that yeah, like I said, you don't have to see it to know that it's available, know that it's a target. That's also very different from working on percentages, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Combinations, for instance, are based largely on percentages.
Right.
right? I got this 5-shot combo that I'm going to throw, and I'm going to throw this one, and that's going to open up this other thing. And the idea is that if I throw this thing, then this target over here has to be open, guaranteed every time.
Yeah, because if it's not open, then I already killed the guy or whatever.
Yeah,
Right?
and that's just not true, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Tons of different ways.
Yeah, you throw one shot, and if you're expecting that thing to be open, and if you're just going to throw based on what you're expecting to be open, you're not really doing target recognition, and you're certainly not doing triggers. So that's, I mean, the thing with, I mean, combinations where I generally steer away from them is if you got this 5-shot combination that you've practiced on the pill, which isn't blocking anything and is responding in a predictable way every time, shot number 5 is strictly dependent on shots 1 through 4 executing
Right.
exactly as you had on the PEL, right?
Yeah.
And so target recognition is, is again knowing that a thing is open, or even feeling that a thing is open, without necessarily having to see it, right? A lot of my target recognition at this point, because I wasn't really taught target recognition as a process.
Right. Yeah, me neither. I was taught combos, throw this thing over and over again, right? This is likely to work. Not
right. Likely.
Yeah.
And again, with the percentages, this is likely to work, or there's a high percentage that's going to work. But if you're throwing that combination and somebody picks up on this combo that you're throwing into a block on everything you do. And you've wasted these 5 shots, and you can't figure out why you can't beat this dude because this combo works on everybody else.
Yeah, and when this combo doesn't work on them and they know exactly what you're doing, they just catch you halfway through a combo and kill you. And
right. Yeah, exactly. And that's the downfall of combos and percentages and probabilities, right? So if we can slow that down and get back to true target recognition and triggers and that sort of stuff, now we're responding to things that are actually happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing with the trigger is we're responding to how our opponent is what they're presenting to us in the fight. And because those are automated responses to stimulus, then we're even if so with triggers, it is so much automated, it is so much a part of what your body is,
right?
You're not doing target recognition.
Yeah. Yep. Like you're really just kind of like when you started talking about what did you call it, your sight picture.
Yeah.
Right. That's, to me, that speaks to like this crystallization of moment where you're like, and that's the time that I throw that shot, because I see them stand like X, and when they get to that standing like this, that's when I throw this type of shot, and it happens.
Yeah, but it is, and it is so automatic that a lot of times I don't know that I've thrown the shot until it's already on the return.
Yeah.
And there's one that I do, and just about anybody who's ever fought me, at some point or another, has got hit in the shoulder socket right there.
Yeah.
And that's a trigger that I have, where for me, the sight picture that I get is when your hand goes out from your body, especially throwing a wrap. If I get somebody that's throwing the wrap going out and coming around, especially a low wrap. So if I see that hand go down and out, I mean, that shoulder socket is right there, right?
Yeah, and that shield generally moves over just that little bit, so you take a half step to the side and just
and I'm throwing it on a Molinet, so it's coming back this way. And and it's just one that, I mean, and I'm targeting the shoulder socket rather than the arm, because the arm is in motion,
right?
But the shoulder socket is a stationary target. And I'm throwing it on a Molinet, which is a good mechanic for me. I can throw that anywhere from like parallel at the hip, or parallel to the hip, all the way up to 90 degrees. And it's just one that, like, this is one of those things that I get where as soon as that hand goes out, like, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Like, that's where that shot is going, because I don't have any choice in that anymore.
Yep. I feel the same way about that specifically, that you covered your eyes, you are going down to your knees now, type thing.
Yep. And that's what a trigger is.
Yeah.
Yeah. that's where, like I said, it is so ingrained in who we are that like I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Now if somebody tries to catch me on that, like does an out motion, if I throw that in there, if it doesn't land, or if they're trying to fake me or something like that, if somebody's trying to catch me in a triggered response, the I can usually recover out of that.
Yeah, that's
That one in particular is a safe enough trigger, especially cutting across, because now I'm
mhm.
firing into the line of their sword anyway. So
Yeah, their
anything that
sword's
they
already out
do,
here. Your shield's already on that side anyway. It's not like they have a whole lot that they can work with to fake you out or whatever.
right?
It's
Yeah.
a
So that's one of those where I can't recall a time where I mean, there are plenty of times when that trigger happens and I don't hit it,
mhm,
but I don't think I don't recall a time where I got caught
right.
in a trigger, right?
Yep.
Where somebody triggered that response and I ended up getting killed for it.
Mhm.
It's certainly possible,
Sure.
but
Whatever.
that's the thing with triggers, because they are based on stimulus and they're based on events that our body has learned are the right time and the right timing to throw those things. Generally, it's something that is also safe to do as well.
Right. Yeah, I'm not throwing from a place where like this could also mess me up if I which is like if I mess this shot up, I'm now in a super dangerous spot. That's not
Right.
really where you end up. That doesn't become a pattern simply by I've probably been killed in a situation where I've done that, right? If
Right.
I'm throwing a trigger and it's something that uh, gets me killed, a couple of times out of 10, then I'm probably going to throw that shot a lot less, and that tends to not become a trigger,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
Just yeah, not
Yeah.
something that I'm going to do. So
Yeah, and so for all of that, triggers tend to be things that are relatively safe
yeah,
and effective, right? I mean, why do we keep doing the thing? Because it keeps working.
because it keeps working. When it stops working, I'll stop throwing it. People wonder why like they stop. Oh, I used to throw that shot all the time. Well, you probably started getting killed using it,
Yeah.
and so you stopped throwing it. That's why. And yeah, it might work
Yeah.
now. Great, pick it up
Yeah.
again.
Conversely, there are a number of shots. I mean, it was a few years back. I realized, I saw somebody throw a thing, and I'm like, hey, I used to throw that,
Yeah.
and wasn't like there's a number of shots that I used to throw that are more creative or complicated, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just stopped throwing them because I don't need them.
Yeah.
They just, I mean, I've kind of gotten to a point where, I mean, the more I fight them, the more I'm getting back to basic
Yep.
mechanics, honestly. Yeah, so there's some, but also,
But also more advanced mechanics, because to make the simple mechanics work, you just have to set them up to simple mechanic, right? I
right.
need to move
Yep.
them with my feet. I need to make sure that they feel safe in this place, then hit them.
Yeah. And some of those shots that I did that may have been more advanced or more creative or whatever, um, I kind of had to go through that
mm-hmm.
to be able to get back to basic mechanics.
Yep.
As is just part of my evolution, right? It's like I had to kind of discover these things. One of my favorite quotes from Bruce Lee is that when I first started kung fu, a kick was just a kick and a punch was just a punch. And when I studied kung fu further, a kick was more than a kick and a punch was more than a punch. And then when I finally understood kung fu, a kick is just a kick and a punch was just a
punch.
punch.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that.
It's something that Bruce Lee talks about as no form from form, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you don't go straight to no form because that's
You
just a
can't,
mess.
right?
Yeah.
You can't go from no mind. You can't just start there, right?
Yeah.
Which is I think where a lot of people when they start getting good, and that's usually when around the time they get knighted, they just I don't need to think about every single shot that I'm throwing and when I'm supposed to throw all those things. They just
Right.
some of them at least just happen.
Right.
If not all of them, some of them at least.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was definitely part of my process and part of my evolution. Is something that I had to go through, was that, throwing a bunch of stuff. So like, hey, let me try this and this and this. And
Yep.
but yeah, so there's definitely a thing where yeah, you stop throwing it probably because you're getting killed, or maybe because you just don't need it anymore. But yeah, those things don't tend to develop into, triggers if they're not effective and they're not safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that one that I've got for the shoulder socket is just something that, and that's the thing about developing triggers. That trigger that I've got for the shoulder socket is, I don't remember a period where I had trained that as a trigger. It's just a thing that has developed where that Molinet is a good mechanic for me. And actually, anytime I throw a slot shot, because I was taught slot shot is one of the first shots that we had in the very beginning. But the one I was taught was like the right off the shoulder, just dropping it right down in here. And I remember trying to practice that on the Pell, and it was always like just kind of weird practicing that. And that's one of the basic shots that I was taught that I don't teach as a basic shot anymore, because it's almost too simple, because you're just pulling it right off your shoulder, right? Hang on, dogs.
Yep, sorry.
So yeah, I just yeah, I don't really teach those in the basics. Hey, baby. I'm recording.
Okay.
You want to say hi? I don't know.
Who am I saying hi to?
Well, right
It's
now,
Korsak.
Korsak.
Oh, hey.
Hey, how's it going? Good to see
Good.
you.
But I'll probably be putting this up on the coach's corner, so you just say hi to everybody.
Oh, well, there you go.
Hi, everybody. Come on, Queen. Go.
Come on, come on.
Doggy dogs. What was I saying? Oh, so yeah, so as far as developing triggers, like I said, the Molinet is a good mechanic for me. And so once and throwing that slot shot, every time I throw a slot shot, I don't throw it like off the shoulder anymore. Every time I like, it's always coming, that tip is rotating in for that Molinet. Even with if we're both sitting on our knees, and I got somebody sitting here like this, and they've just got this valley right in here, it's like, that's one where I could just kind of pull it off the shoulder. But like, still for me, every time that tip is going to rotate in the Molinet. So that's a good mechanic for me. And so, once people started, getting out here, also for me, I do, with the strapped heater, I do what I refer to as body blocking. So, so with my shield position, I'm not chasing all of the blows as they come in with the shield, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my shield in roughly the same place, and I'm going to rotate my body to be able to get
catch
the
all
block
those things.
to pull that into play, right?
Which stops a lot of the like, I will fake you out and get you to move and then hit you, right? Like it stops a lot of the pump fake, Duke Vic type shit.
And also with that too, as I'm rotating my body to get a block on something, that creates complementary motion. Where I'm rotating my body and my sword is rotating at the same time, that's generating motion for me to be able to strike something. Right. So for me, if somebody's throwing a leg wrap, for me, that is, I'm going to rotate to my right. I'm going to bend, turn at the waist, and I'm going to bend at the knees to catch that. So as I do that, and I'm kind of bringing this over, what ended up happening is, sword comes across here to kind of cover high in case somebody's, faking the leg and going high, right? And so as I start rotating over here, well, now the way that rotates to get the block on the leg. Now my hand is
your hand's
above my
already
tip.
here, ready to.
And that's just, anytime my hand gets above my tip, that's an automatic Molinet for me, right?
That's an interesting thing to think about, because I was generally, when I started thinking about this class that I'm going to be teaching on, was triggers when you're being defended against, right? When not maybe when you are attacking yet, not when you've thrown any shots, but if somebody starts doing something, what to do then? But then also, what sort of a trigger when somebody attacks does that turn into? Like, what triggers can you throw then? If you were to like try to teach somebody how to create their own triggers, even not like, obviously this is the thing that's going to work for me, but to even find out what all the triggers could be and then start picking the ones that work, what would you use to teach that? Because
Drills.
I have some thoughts about that. Okay, so what drills specifically?
So if you want to create a particular trigger, right? And I mean, it's kind of hard because, like I said, that a lot of the triggers that I have are just things that have developed, that are partially a product of my fighting style, right?
Mhm.
That rotate that leg block that I do to, the rotation that I do to get that leg block, that's part of how I fight. And so that Molinet ends up being a product of when somebody throws a leg wrap, these are circumstances that just kind of lead to that, right? And so, and that's a, like, body blocking is a thing that I do. It's a thing that I teach as well. But even my students aren't necessarily going to have that same reaction to put that block over there, and they may not have the same affliction, if you will, for throwing the Molinet that I do. So they're not, that's not necessarily going to develop into a trigger the same way that it did for me. So there's a lot of these that develop naturally, and I think honestly those are the best ones. But if you're looking for like that one you're talking about, that with that leg wrap, that is definitely a thing that the way that you throw it, right? If your trigger is, as soon as I see that kite shield block your eyes, then I just know that that's a leg wrap. That is definitely something that you can teach in a drill, right? You can be kind of, move around a little bit and then put that up there.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that's when you fire it, and just, do some more, maybe throw a couple of things out there, and then and just put that up there. And then the student then knows that, it's not always going to happen, but when it does, and when you see this, that's when you fire it. So that is, if you want to develop a specific trigger, then that is definitely a way you can do it. I think one of the earliest triggers I had was leg wrap. And that for me came from, when I started fighting, I was, like less than 6 foot tall and like maybe not even 100 pounds. And I was fighting people that were like close to twice my size. Right.
So I got to make sure that these people stop moving so damn much.
So I was short and I was small. So yeah, I got to keep them from moving so much. And so one of the things, what I started with, I mean, it started with a combination, right? So what I do is I would throw the offside head, and then as I'm recovering my sword to my shoulder, I'd press out on the shield, right? Because you get this, right? So you got the shield here. And so I would press out on that shield and table that. And then as I'm coming back here, and throw the leg wrap, right? Well, and so that combo was a thing that worked for me. And then eventually that led to this sight picture where as soon as I see somebody's shield go flat like this across their face, it's just like the leg wrap is just right there. It's like,
you just know it. It doesn't, you don't need to do anything anymore. You don't even need to really put your shield out to start forcing that.
They've already
done. It's already done the thing that I need them to do. Done. Leg wrap.
It's like, hey, and it's like I can use this setup and I can do this stuff to get the same thing to happen. But if you're just going to give that to me, then that's you give me more, like you give me everything. And so that was one where I started recognizing that with the shield in a certain position, that's where that's probably, well, it was one of my first triggers for sure. And I think that Molinet to the shoulder socket is probably, I want to say my best, but it's not so much that it's my best. It's just that it's the one that is most ingrained in who I am as a fighter for sure. But the first one was definitely that leg wrap. And it's still there. And again, it's one of those things where I get a sight picture. So when we're talking about like target recognition, again, I wasn't taught target recognition as a process early on. And so a lot of my targeting I do by feel, not by sight. So I don't necessarily eyes on target to be able to get a thing. I just, I do it by feel.
There's to me, I think when you say that it's by feel, you mean the same thing that I say when I say it's by sight, because I'm not looking at the target. I'm looking at this corner of their kite is here. That means leg is open, right?
Right.
Their sword is here. I'm not looking at this place. I'm looking at the fact that their sword is now outside of their body. They're going for that deep leg wrap, whatever. That means that, and specifically, their shield is not here. Their shield is there, right? You're not going to throw this shot or this shot if their shield's over here, even if their armor's over here. So it's not quite just this thing is the trigger. It's this plus no shield, right? So it's not, yes, by feel, but also by it's your sight picture. I got the click.
Yep.
That's exactly what it needs to look like for me to throw this thing.
Exactly.
Right. I'm not going to throw, and I guess I used to. Kavigr would block his head with his shield, block his eyes, and I couldn't see it. And if I threw that leg shot, he'd often have his sword upside down over here, pick that up in an tier, because he's just getting out of the way.
Kjartan does that all the time. Yep.
Yeah, learned that one last time I fought Kjartan.
And it's one of those things like, Hansa does that too. Hansa in the West does that. I was fighting Hansa at Estrella one year, and we're out there, boom, 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 and like I'm firing a leg wrap, and and I see like all chunky, meaty leg, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hammer that. And I'm like, and I'm throwing this haymaker down there, and he goes boink, and just puts that puts that dump block down there on the leg. Like I stood back there, and I was like, you son of a bitch. I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Because I was like, I had him dead to rights, and he totally blocked it. And I'm like, and it was totally legit. I'm like, so anyway, derailed that a little bit.
No,
but
that's fine. But yeah, totally. And
that's again. So you're talking about defensive triggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That little dump block that they do the leg like that. Kavigr does. Sometimes Kjartan will do sometimes hand down this way, and sometimes hand out this way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So as it's coming around, a lot of times, especially if he's coming off of a wrap. That may as the wrap is coming through, that may turn out under this way. But yeah, I mean, those are defensive triggers. I was watching Aidenvelt Crown last weekend with Craven and Zipser. And there's a couple of where they're coming along, and Zipser throws that deep offside head, and Craven does the boink, and like
it's like, okay.
I mean Craven is famous for the sombrero block.
Yep.
Which at this point, that's a defensive trigger as well. He's got certain circumstances where like he doesn't just throw up a sombrero block on everything that he does.
God, no.
He does it for a reason. He does it because there's a specific threat, and that is a triggered response for sure. But this one was, I don't know, maybe his shield was down, but yeah, as that deep offside's coming by, he just pulled that back here, and it's like right behind his head. And Vic was throwing a great shot, and it's like boink, and he just
blocked it like it was,
just throws that back there. So yeah, there are definitely defensive triggers. I'd say one that I've kind of developed recently as well for that. Same thing, coming off a leg wrap. As I'm coming off of that leg wrap, the natural rotation that I'm getting for me is where for like Kjartan and all that and Kavigr, as they're throwing low, their shield is coming up, right? So they're bringing that block down underneath it to catch the leg. For me, it's been coming high. I come off that leg wrap, and as somebody's going down, man, there's a lot of times where I'm just like, I'm going to catch a post block right here, as it comes through. And there's a lot of times recently where I've been catching a lot of stick. As soon as I hit that leg, they go down, and it's right there. Because
you just throw that thing up high, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm covered the whole way. You likely aren't going to be able to throw to my offside too quickly that I can't just pull that back and block it, right? So you wait for that target, but.
And again, that's one that I didn't work to develop that particular trigger. It's just something that has ended up being a product of my fighting style. The shots that I like to throw, the natural return path, where my stick wants to go. Because again, there's Ontario is full of, not full of, but there's a lot of people that do the high block when they're throwing low, right? And so that is more likely going to lead to that lower block coming down. I because I think probably because my shield position is a little more neutral. Because that high block you get in Ontario, especially with like Arminius does this a lot. Like
Mhm.
that block is high.
That block is really high. Like
It is really high. And they're catching it, and again with that lower dump block, that's covering a lot of lower stuff too, and they're catching it. And I mean, so it's obviously effective.
Yep.
Again, this is a defensive trigger that they do because it works.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's clearly developed out of success, not out of failure.
Right.
So a lot of it has to do with literally how much are you getting out there and practicing the things, like with anything, helm time counts for tons more than conversation, but we can direct helm time better. What are the things? Do you know Ogadai, Sir Ogadai from? Yeah. So Og did a class. This is years ago now. Shit. I just realized that might be like 12 years ago. He did a class on the Frozen Man drill. Have you ever taught that one before? Yeah,
I have not, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, I quite like it. I find that once you get beyond like 2 or 3 shots, it tends to get to this bindy, everybody just spins around each other. But if you can take it at like 2-step, 3-step in maybe, I find that it does a lot for the like, we're at range. What's the thing that's going to tell you that this is this has a high chance of success, which we get kind of back into percentages, but I think out of percentages and like throwing that shot consistently and throwing it better, then you get a high enough percentage that like you and I, it's become, there's certain shots that are just, this is a guarantee. I'm just going to throw that shot.
Right.
So I think that that's probably something that I'll end up talking about, and maybe we'll go over some Frozen Man drill to kind of teach that thing. But
yes, like I said, as far as teaching and developing a trigger, absolutely, drills are absolutely the best way to do that. You just need to figure out what it is that you want somebody to what you want that trigger to be. Well, what is the trigger? What is the sight picture, the snapshot image, and what is the response?
Yeah,
because that's the two things. Like a trigger is an automated response to stimulus.
Yep.
And so what is the stimulus and what is the response? So as far as developing things, then that's absolutely the way to do that. But otherwise, I think triggers are just kind of, for me, there's just been things that have developed on their own.
Right. Yeah. Certain things that have just worked. I'm trying to, in this class, my plan is to kind of like, hey, we'll go over some of them that we can now practice, and I want you to practice with a partner. We're going to have everybody in armor and stuff, and hey, I want you to just kind of throw some stuff, and you guys don't go hard. We're being polite, and you're going to hit each other, so don't kill each other. But the one partner is I'm going to do this and try to create a trigger in this moment. So I just kind of want to we'll go through.
Well, yeah, and I mean, some of the stuff you were talking about as far as percentages, I mean, when your opponent, when their hand crosses their face, that's something you can base a trigger on. For me, it's like I said, when the hand goes out or when the hand goes down, if and kind of looking at cross quarters too, right? I mean, well, I say if I want to hit somebody high and right, I need their shit low and left.
Exactly. Right. I need it to be moving in that direction, because once it starts moving there, stopping it and then starting it back in the other direction it needs to go takes time. Exactly. And in that time, I've hit you.
Yep.
So
and that's the thing, is like when a thing is in motion and then you try to take it back the other way, the quickest path to do that is to follow a circle.
Most people don't do that. They stop it. And
you understand that when you stop a thing, an object in motion tends to stay in motion.
Exactly.
Which is why that circle is a faster path, right? So an object in motion tends to stay in motion. So if you're moving all of your stuff one way and then you have to go back the other way, you actually have to stop this and then you have to generate motion again to get it moving the other way.
So then we can talk about triggers as not just a thing being in a place, but a thing even heading in a direction, right? I don't have to be waiting for somebody to completely cover their eyes. I'm going to keep using that example because it's easy for me. But like,
Yeah.
I don't have to wait for them to completely finish covering their eyes. I know that their shield is going up, therefore I can throw that leg. It's done. Because you can't get your shield, back or stopped and then moved back down. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, things like a flat snap, if somebody's got their basic setup so they're covering a flat snap, it's like when motion happens, you're creating a target.
Yep.
Right. And that's part of triggering too, is, and when I talk about, motion happening, that even means when somebody is throwing a shot at you. Right. Even though there's a threat there, there's motion happening. And so if somebody comes out of a really super tight guard where they've got that flat snap covered, as soon as their hand moves to throw that flat snap, that's a trigger, right? If they're in there, if you can get that sight picture, if they, like, as soon as that front corner comes down or any motion happens, and yeah, those are definitely some things that you can look at for if somebody has a particular guard, or really any guard. I mean, if once, wherever their guard is, as soon as you see that corner drop or come out or whatever, as soon as motion happens,
as soon as they start throwing, and that means that their leg stops moving, or if they stop stepping at that point in time, if they start throwing, if that means that you can punch your shield out and move something, like, okay.
I've got one of my grand squires, Aver, has got like just a laser deadlock on right leg lead.
Oh yeah.
Right. If you're standing in a right leg lead, or if you're like, he'll hit it on the transition too.
Oh yeah.
If you're just taking that step forward, coming from a shield leg lead to right leg lead, he will hit it as your right foot hits the ground. He'll hit you right above the knee.
Nice.
And it's that's his trigger.
Yeah.
For sure. It's like you go to a right leg lead against that guy, and you do it to your peril, because
what was their name again? I just got to pay attention for
Aver. Yes,
Aver.
Viscount Aver. he's down here. So yeah, as soon as he sees that, he's just got a deadlock on that. And again, it's one of those things where he doesn't have to see it, he's just feeling it. That's a total trigger for him.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how he developed that. Maybe he was fighting somebody that, maybe you're fighting somebody and they go to right leg lead and they start tearing you up. You're like, well, no, that shit,
gotta make that stop. Yep.
Yeah, let's stop that. It's like, oh, you're gonna go right leg lead? How about I rip that leg off?
Yep, exactly. I remember I used to have a trigger, and I just don't fight with the shield style anymore, but I used to have a rectangle, and I would fight with the top corner high up here and it angling low toward my ear.
Right.
And I would just wait, because I'm like, if people can just drop that flat snap right in there, and I know what it looks like, and I'm going to wait for you to throw that shot. And as soon as you do, I'm going to close my hand and pull that corner back up, block that shot immediately. And it's great because it shuts off their combo, because they generally didn't think past, oh, squire kill.
Yeah.
Triggers like that too, where you make a trigger out of, I will make them mess up. Now I will hit them in some capacity.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I followed that up with, but
again, with the defensive triggers, right?
Yep. Yeah. This is my, I'm going to block this, then throw X, right? I know where their arm is. Maybe that's something you could follow up with easily, right? I'm going to block that shot and cut your arm off. Okay. I feels like, okay, we've got a bit of a handle on like what to do. I'm going to teach them a bunch of the frozen drill stuff. We're going to kind of work through some specific triggers for each person. If that
would be ideal if you have time.
Yeah, I think I got about an hour or so. So I kind of want to explain my process in the first couple of minutes, and then
yeah, you'll probably have time to do maybe find a trigger for one or two people.
Yeah.
But if you can do some drills to kind of help one or two, like show people how to develop triggers, then they can go back to practice, and they can
do that on their own time.
They can do that, but yeah, we just don't. There's just not enough time in a class to help everybody.
Oh, for sure.
As much as we want to.
Yeah. It's been hopefully super apparent to everybody that I'm like, you could just ask me at any point in time. I'd be happy to just have a fight practice in my backyard. So,
Happy to.
yeah, right. Would love to teach people. Okay. Yeah. I guess if there are other people who are watching right now, if you have a trigger that you use regularly, comment it below. That would be great and very helpful for me because I can go through them and then potentially talk about your trigger at our practice / class. That'd be really great.
Yeah.
And then if you think of, can you think of any other ones that you like generally use?
No, I think, that one of the shoulder socket is definitely one. The leg wrap is one that I've had from my earliest days. I'm sure there are others that kind of come off as a trigger, some of which are also for me following the natural return path. So there's some there's one that I've been hitting a lot of recently, that I attribute not as much as a trigger as it is a natural return path, but I think it could be as well. Fighting somebody on their knees, and I want to throw a flat snap because the flat snap's a good shot for me. And as I throw the flat snap, it gets deflected, and it gets deflected kind of high and away.
Yep.
For some reason this happens a lot when somebody's on their knees, right? Because I'm throwing that, and like I said, flat snap's a good shot for me. And as I throw that, because it's coming down, for some reason the way that it skips up is it kind of goes up this way. And what's been happening is as it comes this way, it's just a very natural cut back here.
Yeah.
And it ends up hitting right in the gutter. And that's one where it happens really super fast. And so people think that it's a combination, but it's not.
Because it's just literally the return path. My sword just came here. I just don't stop it because again, objects in motion stay in motion. We don't want to stop our sword for no reason. I can just use all this power in some other place.
Right.
And then is their head open? Like, is their sword up here? No. Is it here? Good. Yeah, then I can hit that spot, right? But if it's over here, then we're going to throw into their arm or whatever.
Yeah. And as it's coming up and away, again, I go in this circle right here. So I'm not getting here and stopping and then cutting back. And so that's been one for me that and the thing about that is, if I were to try to make that a combination,
right,
that is a shot that is dependent on me missing a flat snap.
Yeah.
And having that flat snap be deflected in a very particular way. And that's why I say it's the natural return path for me is determined by how the blow impacts or does not impact. So if I hit that flat snap and it bounces away, I don't get that same shot.
Yeah.
Right. So and it's just one that, because it happens to get deflected across, then it gives me that cutback. So it's a little mix of possibly a trigger, possibly just the natural flow of the fight and the natural return path. So that's what I've been. And again, it's not, I hesitate to say it's one I'm having success with, because it's not really something that I'm trying to do. It's just
okay. Yeah.
It's a thing that I'm allowing to happen, that has happened to what seems to be happening a lot.
And that just makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not like every single trigger has to be completely obviously we even talked about it. Most of our triggers aren't thought out currently.
Right.
They're thought out, years ago, and we have just developed a your sight picture of this works, and sight picture of click, my arm is right here. I know how to turn that back into this shot. And it seems like that shot would work right now.
Yeah. Well, and I'll give you another example of that as far as the difference between triggers and natural return path. When I throw an offside leg in the Molinet, for me, there's a couple of fairly comfortable natural returns that I get off of that. So if I throw an offside leg on a Molinet, and if the shot comes straight back, right, that has a natural arc coming back through for a flat snap. Right.
Yep.
So that doesn't mean that if I throw an offside leg, then I'm automatically throwing a flat snap after that.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I throw that offside leg and it doesn't come back, and if it goes through instead, if it pulls through on the return, well, now for me, that motion is leading to a leg wrap.
Mm-hmm.
So again, so that natural return path is determined by how the blow impacts. So if it bounces and it comes straight back, and that's the return I get, then that leads to flat snap. But again, it doesn't, just because I'm throwing the one doesn't necessarily mean that I'm automatically always going up here afterwards. And that's the flow. And the difference there is that as the shot impacts, that changes what happens next.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And that's all natural flow of the fight. Whereas a trigger is snapshot response.
Yep.
I get a sight picture, I see a thing, and that gives me this response here. Now that response may then lead to more natural return path.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which is another thing, but now it's initiated by a triggered response.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, man.
Well, that's been really helpful. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if anybody is watching, please let me know what your triggers are. I would love to kind of pick through them and ask questions and that sort of thing. And I'm probably gonna maybe do a bit of the let's see what triggers are useful based on. That's another thing that eventually I want to talk about, is that you start building up a catalog of people that you're fighting against, and I'm like, I know what this person does when they do this, and I know what this person does when they do that, and that will change. Like, I don't throw the same sorts of shots on Kviger that I throw on Ivar, let's say, right? And that's halfway because they fight quite a bit differently, but also because there's certain things that are gonna, there's my snapshot, I know I can throw this sort of thing, and other times it's that just doesn't work on him. I gotta throw something completely different.
Well, and also every fighter has their own triggers, and so if you are aware of certain triggers that people tend to have, it's like, if you don't want me hitting you to shoulder socket, don't throw your hand out.
Don't throw your hand out, right? So I just don't do those shots. I'm not going to throw deep wraps on you for any particular reason. I like my shoulder socket.
I mean, it's like, you can certainly throw a leg wrap on me, but you better have that covered, because if you don't, I'm gonna rip it off.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that I don't know how to teach. I can teach you how to pick it up maybe, and then go and you have to fight everybody. And then you have to memorize what everybody does. I can't teach you how to all the things that I've learned about people.
A lot of what I get when I hit somebody in the shoulder socket is they don't know why.
Oh,
and I'm like, well, here it is. Like, this is my trigger. This is what I'm seeing, and this is how to stop it.
Yep.
And it's not so much how to stop the shot that I'm throwing. It's how do you stay covered so that it doesn't trigger that response.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you don't want me hitting your shoulder socket, don't do this. Doctor, it hurts when I do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do that.
Okay.
Right on. Well,
thanks.
for your time. Hang on just a second. I'm just gonna cut the recording here. So again, hope everybody enjoyed the conversation there. If you got any questions, you certainly ask either one of us. We'll be happy to.
Yeah.